So nice to meet you, everyone. My name is Sara Collins, and I am the head of customer success at Fellow. And I'm so excited to share with you today Fellow's employee engagement secret. So Fellow is a remote-first technology startup based out of Ottawa. But like many of you in the room today, we did not start out that way. I started at Fellow in 2020, and that was about 3 weeks before the first COVID-19 lockdown. What we thought was going to be a 3-week change in the way we work turned into a multi-year endeavor. And it overall changed the way that we thought about work. While like many companies, we used our own product really extensively prior to the pandemic, but it wasn't until the shift in remote work that we realized the impact that it had on employee engagement. And it really shifted how we started to use our own product. So for those of you who are not yet familiar with it, Fellow is a meeting productivity tool, and we're on a mission to make meetings delightful. But in the context of why we're all here today, what do meetings have to do with employee engagement? So let's start with 2 things that we know are true. One is that there's a lot of little factors that add up to healthy employee engagement. And thing number 2 is that if you think about your day-to-day, meetings make up a big portion of it. So if we zoom out and we think about how many meetings you have each day, each week, each month, and each year, you spend a lot of time in meetings. And it becomes clear that those little habits around those meetings can have a really big impact on employee engagement. So for those of us at Fellow, that's exactly what we focused on. We focused on making every meeting a great experience by empowering every member of our team to actively participate in the conversation. From one-on-ones to team meetings, employees had equal access to contribute to the agenda by adding insights, questions, blockers, and this shifted the way that they contributed to every conversation. The manager then shifted to prioritizing all of the points within that agenda, and it left them lots more room in their day because now they didn't have to do all of this prep work by themselves. It meant more consistency across career conversations, which meant that individual employee growth was top of mind all of the time. So not only did this shift employee engagement, but it also shifted manager responsibilities, which in turn contributed to less burnout. And that also meant more manager engagement in the workplace. So by shifting the way that we ran meetings, it meant that every department not just felt more empowered, but more informed leaving these conversations. And so every member of the department felt trusted to use this information to make better decisions at every level of the organization. They felt like owners. So if you can change your meeting culture by empowering every employee with a tool like Fellow, not only can it change employee engagement, but it can also change the trajectory of your company. Suddenly, you become one of the 2022 best places to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. That was good, and I would expect Fellow to talk about meetings, right? I mean, it's the effect of meetings is the raison d'etre for your company. So thanks for getting that off, and we'll take some questions, by the way, after the 3 mini presentations. Next, we're going to go to Darren Hansen from Attain Group. Over to you.
I generally don't need a microphone, but just in case, I'll use one. So I'm Derrick, I'm with the Attain Group, and it's lovely to be here. It's nice to share my experience as surprisingly being named one of the best workplaces in Ottawa. I was quite pleasantly surprised when that happened. And honestly, I have to start by telling you a story. I was an awful employer yesterday, just terrible. I hung up on a partner who I was angry at. And I said, you know, this is a terrible time. I just had this awful experience where you didn't show up and do what you were expected to do, and you disappointed me and embarrassed me. And I think we need to have a chat about it. This is one of my partners. And this is being supposed to be the best workplace in Ottawa to work at. And I thought, you know what, that's a great way to talk about the way that I go at it and how I think my secret to engagement, employee engagement, is to go into service, go into the office with an attitude of service. Every morning I think about, how can I make a difference in somebody else's life? How can I actually make an impact? How can I get outside of myself and help somebody else get to whatever fulfills them? Get on, I call it being on your X. Yesterday I wasn't on my X. I was way off my X. And you know, we have those days. There's days like that, and the challenge isn't, it's like playing golf. I was looking outside the beautiful golf course and thinking about my golf game. It isn't about the good shots, it's about the bad shots, which unfortunately for me, I'm not much of a golfer, so I have more bad shots than good shots. And sometimes my days are like that. But if I remember at the end of the day that I tried to make a difference, and I went in with an attitude of service, that potentially people are going to stay with us. And I have an interesting retention rate. We've been around for 18 years and we have a 97% retention rate. No one ever leaves. Now, there is a few exceptions where we have invited them to join industry because it wasn't a good fit. And generally that we know that within the first 6 months of somebody working there. But when we hire them, we say, we really want you to be here for life. We're an engineering firm. So I know poor Michael was trying to describe what we do, and sometimes it's hard. So we're an engineering firm doing technology engineering in the building, so smart buildings. And nobody teaches that in school. So you can go to electrical engineering for 5 years or 4 years, come in and you don't know anything about what we do. It takes us 3 to 5 years to train somebody to know anything about what we're doing. So if we're making a commitment to hire, it's a huge, big investment for us. And we have this very thorough and exciting way of onboarding people to say, you know what, we want you to be here for the rest of your life. What can we do to help you make this your career choice and keep you here for the rest of your life? So I want to talk about that. So I don't know who's controlling my slides, but maybe you can flip the slide. I have a few little bullets there, but if not, I can just speak to it. It was really easy. You know, it's the first thing I do is it's the thing that my mother taught me, treat people the way they want to be treated. Really, it's so easy to go into the office and just sort of treat them the way I'd like to be treated or the way I think they want to be treated. Treat them like a human being. The big thing for me is I only sell people. That's my whole business. And I am a terrible engineer. Terrible, just awful. And long ago I realized if the technical stuff was left up to me, we wouldn't survive. So I needed to surround myself with really smart people who were way better at it than I am. And so acknowledge them, I give them time, I make sure they're heard, I make sure they get credit for what they do. You know, it's really people want to be seen, they want to be heard, they want to be recognized. It's so easy, it's not easy actually, because it takes a conscious effort on my part to get outside of myself and think, every day, thank you for doing a good job. And that's what I do. I say thanks for doing a great job. I go to every day with a work of attitude of service. I ask myself, how can I help someone today? I hire people with new ideas and a great attitude. I have a little thing on my desk with a Tigger and an Eeyore. And it really is how I live my life. When I look at somebody, I think, can you be a Tigger? Maybe, and if people who don't know what a Tigger is, somebody who comes to the office with an attitude of, I just want to be there because I want to have some fun and I want to make a difference. And I literally have this Tigger and Eeyore on my desk, so I remind myself, and I try to come at the world from a point of being a Tigger. So I think that's a big one. The one that I've learned recently, and I guess this is inclusion and diversity, is make sure my bus is big enough. I really don't care where you come from. I really don't care what ability you have. I really don't care what you do outside of the office. I do. I truly care because I'm genuinely interested, but we have a really big bus. And the way that has manifested itself is people will come to me, and the thing I heard most often hiring young people from the universities and colleges is, I have no experience. And I always say, it doesn't matter. We don't care. What we care about is where do you want to go? How can we help you get to where you want to be? We have constant one-to-ones where we ask people, we really would like you to stay here, but if you're not going to be here in 4 or 5 years, how can we help you get to be where you want to be? And so we have a large bus. Bring them all. We have lots of room for people on the bus. I'm not sure who's in control of the slides, but I'll just keep going anyway. Is there a clicker? Is it me? Oh, wow, I should know that. You see, I told you I was a terrible engineer. Okay, good. Okay, in that case, I'll go this way and I'll do one more. By the way, those are some of my people, and those are some of the pictures we had a picture day for our website, and that was some of the pictures that came out of our website, and that is a father and son team. The other thing that we're finding is I've now been around long enough. This is, by the way, only my second job. I owned a company for 20 years when I was 18, and I sold it when I was 31. Worked for them for another number of years, and then I got bored and I started another company. So I've only had 2 jobs, and so I'm really not the best guy to talk about how to do it, because I've only created my own jobs because I think I'm unemployable otherwise. But these are things that I learned, and it seems to be working for us. Remember who's important, and for me, it's always hard just to be present. When somebody's in front of me, I like to go into the office, and what we're finding is maybe half the people are coming in voluntarily. And half the time, we're not talking anything about work. We're only talking about what's happening in their lives, what's happening in their family life, what's happening, in sports, whatever's going on with them. And every now and again, we talk about work. And, people do their heads down work. They try to get it done. 6 months before the pandemic, we had an industrial psychologist come in, and I thought, what would it be like if we all went to work from home? Do you think that would be a good thing? And this industrial psychologist, who I saw here at one of the Ottawa Board of Trade events, said, if you test everybody and get an idea of how to change your KPIs to work from home and upgrade your technology, it would be a benefit. And so we did that. 6 months later, the pandemic hit. We literally hit a button. Everybody went home and said, okay, it's not a test. And we didn't even miss a beat. In fact, I found it was even more inclusionist because we had people from the regions, Halifax, Toronto, Montreal and Vancouver, were able to join with the rest of us. And so our culture remained the same. I'm also happy to see them drifting back in because, frankly, I miss them. One of the ones that I've always done hiring is try to surround myself with people who are a lot smarter than I am. And it's so easy because I try to bring people into the office who have skill sets that are completely different, and attitudes and experiences and their culture and how they bring it to it, because they bring something to us. And we keep adding this great, bigger and bigger thing. So people that are smarter than I am, it's easy to find. Have a great attitude. Sorry. It's so important. Every day I go in and I say hi to every single person in the office. It's such a simple thing. I stop and I say, hi, good morning, how's it going? How was your night? What'd you do? And then when I'm leaving, I say, good night, thanks a lot. I really appreciate what you did today. And it's so funny that people don't do that. And some people are afraid to come and say goodnight to me. I'm not sure why, but I try to do it. I try to make time for them to go and say, you know what, thanks for doing what you did. Give new staff a chance. There's a whole bunch of I've heard this we have 5 generations in our office, and I love the young new people. They bring a fresh attitude and a fresh experience, and they've taught me more things than I'll ever learn in my lifetime from bringing new people in. Thank God. I also have children, so I know how to stay humble. If I ever get too big for myself, I go home and they make sure they remind me exactly who I am. I'm just a dad. That's all I am. One of the things we've learned lately is that the key for us, and I'm sure people have heard this or read the book, is to find people who are hungry, humble, and smart. And that's hard. Sometimes you can find 1 or 2, but it's really important to have all 3. Hungry, humble, and smart. It's also important that we stay that way. I try to stay I try to live that way, and my staff demonstrates the same thing. And then the last one is, and this is one I learned over the years, is that I encourage them to make mistakes. Feel free to make a mistake. Do it as often as you need to do it. Sometimes you make the same mistake more than once. That's okay. Never hide your mistake. Let's talk about it. How can we help you make it better? And generally, that's how we try to keep people. So far, so good. We managed to keep them around for a while, and I found out that they like working there and they want to keep working there. Interestingly, some of the feedback that we got from the survey, we've already implemented. We put a pension plan in place, we put vision care in place, we put in some wellness accounts, things that gave us a chance to make it even better. Above all, it's a place I like to go to work. So that's what I wanted, was to create a place where I wanted to work as well. Thanks.
Wow, that's lots of great content. Thank you, Derrick. I'm going to start classifying people as Eeyore or Tigger. I get the Winnie the Pooh analogy. That was my childhood. And thank you for taking some of that survey feedback and acting on it. I'm sure many people in the room are familiar with engagement surveys, and one of the key things you need to remember is if your team tells you something, you're kind of responsible for responding to it. Not to say you can say yes all the time, but good for you for acting on it. And last but certainly not least, let's welcome Sara Rossman from Rossmann Architecture. Here's Sara. Sara 2.
Sara number 2. Can you hear me? Good. I'm not likely to be chained to a desk or a podium or anything, so I'm going to move around a little. I just want to say thank you for having me. This is a real honor for us to be included in Ottawa's best workplaces, especially considering we're just a hop into Gatineau there, just across the bridge. So we feel really privileged to be here today. I just want to talk a little bit about going back to the basics of building a human-centric workplace. We talk a lot at our office about thinking left, so thinking to the beginning of the process, what way the right, well, backwards for you, but my right, the end result we want is engaged, hardworking, fulfilled employees. And I'm going to start right back at the basics of how we do this. So you have to think about what are the things that we need to think about as humans. And I'm sure many of you have seen this before. This is a commonly accepted ideology in psychology. And I think this is where we have to think of all the different levels of need for our employees. And we start at the very bottom with the physiological needs. That's, food, water, the basics of our physiology, and closely followed by safety. And those are the two, as employers, those are the bare minimum. We have to, give them a job and we need to pay them. That's the bare minimum. So in order to have an employee, that's what you got to do. But in order to really progress past that, we got to start thinking of the next level, which is belonging. Everybody has a need to feel like they're belong to a group and are feeling welcomed. And that's, the next basic need, which is, relatively easy to achieve with a little bit of just a little bit of human interaction. You start to gain that bit of the rapport. After that, we get a little bit more challenging, and we get into Esteem. So this is recognition for your work within the company, and I think it's really important to that each person, no matter what role they play in the company, understands how they contribute to the overall goal. And I think that gives them self-esteem and esteem from their coworkers as well. And I think everybody understanding that every person is important, from admin assistant to CEO and everything in between. Everybody has a really important role, and we can't do it without each of these people. That's why we're there. We wouldn't hire people just to be seat fillers. Each person plays an important role. So that's a really important thing. Once we get to the top of the pyramid, it gets pretty tough. And especially, for humans as, each individual, for us to attain self-actualization is a goal that we all would love to achieve. And as complex beings, that's a bit challenging. But there's ways that we can help to get to that top level of the pyramid, even if maybe not in the time that they're working within our company, but if we can help them figure out, what are their goals in life? What is their purpose? That's it's a conversation. That work is such a big part of our life that if they're not having that we're not having that conversation with our employees, we can help them to figure that out, maybe on a long term, maybe not in the immediate future, but maybe perhaps long term. So how do we meet these needs? And again, I'm going to take it back to the very basics. You have to prioritize it. If you don't understand that your humans are, the basis of your business, then you are never going to get there. So first thing we do is we prioritize it. And I'm very happy to say I have with me today my COO, Shane Balcom, and my culture coordinator, Anastasia Morris. And they're my team that really help make sure that our people are a priority. And even though we're a smaller company, we're about 40 people, having people, even as our strong operational, chief here, he understands, and probably more so than I do even, that culture and people are what really make a difference. And when you have that as a focus, all the results come naturally. So it doesn't mean that we don't have a strong focus on process, on all the operational aspects, but the culture and people is part of that and actually has to be above all of that. And the next thing I would say is incredibly important is to invest in leadership. And I think when you invest in leadership, it helps to ensure that everything gets, your entire culture gets passed down throughout the entire organization as well. And I think making sure that, we can have this lovely vision at the top, but it has to be continually communicated on a daily basis. And I think this is my next point is ask for in-person feedback. So we talk about employee engagement surveys, and that's a really great tool, and I think we all need to do that. But in-person feedback, virtual or physically in person, I don't think is as much of an issue, but just having someone look you in the eye and say, how are you, what's important to you, how can I serve you? We heard about servant leadership as well, and I think having that human connection, and this is why if you invest in your leaders and you help them to understand that this is part of their job, it's performance management is part of their job, all kinds of things are part of their job, but investing in their team is incredibly important, and that caring for their team and how do I help you to achieve what you would like to face-to-face and building that relationship and letting them know that it's important to the company what's important to them. And the very last thing, and again, CEO Shane is the best at this, is being consistent. And I think having those regular one-on-ones, having discussions of culture, of the issues that really matter to your people are really important. We don't have, 1 week a year we talk about employee engagement. We have a theme for the month of employee engagement. It has to be something that we're talking about on a regular basis. How do we get to our people and make them feel the best they can? And I think happy people, obviously we all know happy people are more productive people, and I think if we just start at the basics, I think that's where you have to start. And I know, in a big organization, sometimes you get, I don't pretend to advise some of these bigger organizations, but I can imagine anyway that sometimes you get lost in your big complex processes with your big organizations. But I think sometimes you have to take a step back and start at the beginning again. Are we meeting each of these individual levels, and how do we ensure that we can get as high up the pyramid as we can go? So I just want to say thank you to all of you for having me again today, and I really hope that my message can have a little impact somewhere along the way. Thank you.